In 1942, in the heart of London, on that dark night when bombs were falling, a young red-haired American nurse made the most difficult decision of her life. How did this brave woman named Sarah put herself face to face with death to save her beloved boyfriend's life? Would you also risk your life for your loved ones? Send your own stories to the email address in the description and let us tell your story too.
I am Sarah Elizabeth Montgomery. In that cold October of 1942, I was 23 years old and had made the biggest decision of my life. From the small town of Dayton, Ohio, I had applied to go to London as a volunteer nurse, right in the heart of the war. My reddish-brown hair always waved on my shoulders, and my green eyes reflected my determination. I was of medium height, my body was slim but strong. My hands never trembled, my voice was clear and resolute. The day I applied to the American Red Cross, my mother's tears are still in my mind. "Sarah, why do you have to go so far away?" My mother had asked that afternoon as we sat in the kitchen. My father was silently reading his newspaper, but I could feel his eyes on me. "Because they need my help there, Mom." And I stopped, because I didn't want to say the real reason. James William Thompson, that tall, blue-eyed pilot candidate I met in Dayton. He was now serving in the Royal Air Force, and had mentioned in his last letter that he was in London. At the end of October, the great transatlantic ship departed from New York Harbor of the United States. There were 29 volunteer nurses on the ship. We all came from different cities but carried the same purpose: to help wounded soldiers in the war. The Atlantic crossing took 14 days. Every night, I slept with the fear of German submarine attacks. When I arrived in London, seeing the state of the city shook me deeply. Most of the buildings were in ruins. Windows were boarded up with planks. The streets were full of debris, and people walked with tired, weary faces. They placed me at St. Bartholomew Hospital. The hospital was an 800-year-old historic building, but the war had affected it too. There were large cracks in the ceilings, and the windows were broken. The first night I arrived, head nurse Elizabeth Davies greeted me. She was a woman in her 50s, with gray hair, stern eyes, but a heart of gold. She was tall, stood upright, her voice was sharp like a commander's. "Sarah, know this here, bombs will fall every night. You too will sleep in the basement like us. The shift starts at 6 in the morning, lasts until midnight. Are you ready?" "I'm ready, ma'am," I said, though I wasn't ready at all. My first week was like hell. Every night at 9 o'clock, the air raid sirens would sound, and we would go down to the basement as patients and staff. Wounded soldiers would come, most of them covered in blood. I would see soldiers with legs blown off, arms shattered, faces burned. Sometimes I felt like crying, but I held myself back. At the end of the third week, that evening happened. It was the 15th day of November, and London was subjected to the most violent attack I had ever seen. The sirens sounded at 8:30, but this time it was different. The sound was longer, more urgent. Hospital director Dr. William Richardson came running. He was 45 years old, with graying hair, wearing glasses, a serious-faced man. He was of medium height, a bit overweight, but always dressed neatly. "Tonight will be very heavy. Let's make all preparations," he said. The bombardment started at 9 o'clock. It was much more violent than previous attacks. The foundations of the building were shaking. Plaster pieces were falling from the ceiling. 150 people had taken shelter in the basement. Wounded soldiers, nurses, doctors, cleaning staff. We were all sitting huddled together. Around 10 o'clock, an explosion sound from upstairs shook me. Then someone shouted, "The hospital has been hit." A bomb fell on the third floor. My heart was pounding in my chest. The third floor was the male soldier ward. 26 wounded soldiers were lying there. Head nurse Davies immediately spoke. "No one will go upstairs. We will stay here until this bombardment ends." But I was thinking of James. In his last letter, he had said he was wounded and in the hospital. I didn't know which hospital he was in, but my heart told me he was here. While the bombardment continued, screaming sounds started coming from upstairs. Wounded soldiers were calling for help. I couldn't stand it anymore. "I'm going upstairs," I said and stood up. The head nurse grabbed my arm. "Sarah, this would be suicide. The bombardment is continuing, but people are dying up there. I'm a nurse. My duty is to help them." "No, Sarah, you will stay here." But I wasn't listening anymore. My heart was telling me that James was there. I freed myself from her arm and ran toward the stairs. I heard Davies shouting behind me, but I didn't stop. When I reached the 3rd floor, the scene I saw horrified me. Half of the ceiling had collapsed, debris covered everywhere. The walls were cracked, and the windows were shattered. There was a smoky, dusty air in the ward. The screams of wounded soldiers echoed in the corridors. When I entered the first room, 4 soldiers were trapped under the debris. One's leg was stuck, another's arm was crushed. I immediately started rescuing them. My hands were trembling, but I continued. Outside, the bombardment was continuing. Flame flashes visible from the windows illuminated the room. When I moved to the 2nd room, I heard a familiar voice from the bed in the corner. "Sarah, Sarah, is that you?" When I turned around, my eyes filled with tears. James was there. My James, tall and blue-eyed, was lying in the bed. His left leg was in a cast. There was a large wound on his face, but he was smiling. "James, is it really you?" "Yes, Sarah, it's me." "What are you doing here?" "I was looking for you," I said, and ran to his side. Just then, a loud explosion sound was heard. The building shook, and a large beam from the ceiling of the room where James was lying was about to fall. I quickly threw myself over James and took the beam myself. My back was crushed, but I had protected James. "Sarah, why did you do this?" "Because I love you, James. I can't bear to lose you." That night, the bombardment continued until morning. I stayed by James's side and continued to help the wounded soldiers. My back was hurting, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that the people I loved were safe. When morning came, the bombardment stopped and rescue teams arrived. The hospital had suffered heavy damage, but we had few casualties. Head nurse Davies came to me. "Sarah, what you did tonight was very dangerous, but at the same time, very brave. You are a real nurse." 3 days later, James's health condition improved, and he had to return to his duty. As he was leaving the hospital, he held my hand. "Sarah, when this war ends, will you marry me?" "Yes, James, I will wait for you." In 1945, the war ended. James and I returned to Ohio and got married. But that night, that terrible experience we lived through in London, changed our lives forever. We learned what love, sacrifice, and courage mean. Sarah's story shows us that true love sometimes requires risking life. During wartime, we discover how great sacrifices we can make for our loved ones. Sarah's courage not only saved James, but also gave hope to all the wounded in the hospital that night. Have you had such brave moments in your life? What sacrifices have you made for your loved ones? I await your comments.